They say nothing exciting ever happens in Pine Hollow before noon, but Lisa Matthews would have disagreed with that. At least on the morning it all began. The sky above the small Oregon town was just turning gray with the first hints of dawn as Lisa's battered green sanitation truck creaked its way down Oak Street, headlights cutting wide beams through the last tatters of night mist. The familiar clatter of trash cans, the low rumble of the engine, the faint, sharp bite of pine in the air, these were her daily companions. For Lisa, a 47-year-old single mother and veteran of every route in the county, routine was comfort. Routine was safety. She never expected to find herself at the heart of a story that would shake her, her neighbors, and maybe the whole town. It was the sound that stopped her, not the usual shuffle and scrape of raccoons, nor the metallic thunk of a can rolling out into the street, but something rougher, heavier, a desperate scuffle. She set the truck in park, rubbing tired eyes, and peered down the row of garbage bins waiting for their early morning pickup. There, next to the Wilsons' mailbox, something moved in the half-light. Not a dog, not a raccoon, not even a stray house cat. As Lisa stepped off the truck, boots crunching on frosty gravel, her breath caught. What she saw was so out of place, so wild, she doubted herself for a heartbeat. A bobcat, skinny, its patchy coat filthy, tail drooping, one ear notched by old battles with the wild. It was hunched over a toppled can, paws clumsy as it fished through cold, greasy trash for scraps. Lisa's heart hammered in her chest. Bobcats were part of life on the edge of the forest, but never this close, never so broken. She took a slow, careful step, hands raised instinctively. "Hey, hey, easy, buddy." Her voice trembled, mixing caution and something like awe. The bobcat froze, hackles raised, yellow eyes locked on her. In that moment, Lisa saw it, not just an animal, but a spirit battered by hunger and fear, refusing to give in. Suddenly the cat staggered, legs wobbling as it tried to back away. Instead, it collapsed sideways, chest heaving, blood from a fresh cut glistening on its hind leg. For one wild, impossible second, Lisa wondered if she should run. Bobcats were dangerous when cornered, and this one was sick, desperate. But instead, she crouched, moving just close enough to see the animal's sides heaving, its breath whistling in the chill air. The world around her seemed to narrow. Somewhere a dog barked, a garbage truck rumbled farther down the street, but all Lisa heard was the soft, ragged panting of the wild creature before her. She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands, thumbs clumsy on the screen as she dialed the local wildlife rescue hotline, something she'd never had to do before, despite years working at Dawn's Edge. It rang. Once. Twice. "Please, please," she whispered, more to herself than anyone. She glanced at the bobcat. Its eyes, a wild gold, met hers, not pleading, not grateful, just stubborn, alive. Lisa remembered every news story about wild animals put down, every neighbor's angry story about problem predators. She bit her lip. She could walk away, pretend she hadn't seen. Or she could do something. Anything. The dispatcher's voice came on, calm and brisk. Lisa stammered out her location, describing the animal as best she could. "It's a bobcat, I think. A young one, but it's in bad shape, bleeding, looks like it's starving. Please hurry." Minutes passed like hours. Lisa found herself kneeling, her orange work gloves stained with dirt and something darker. The bobcat didn't move, except to shudder, paws twitching as if chasing invisible prey in its fevered mind. "Hang in there," she murmured, feeling ridiculous, feeling like she was making some wild, foolish mistake. But her hands stayed steady now. her fear replaced by a strange, urgent protectiveness. A car door slammed somewhere nearby, making Lisa jump. The bobcat, too weak to run, managed a low, guttural growl. She stepped between the animal and the noise, shielding it from view as two curious joggers paused, watching from a distance. Lisa waved them off, her voice firmer than she felt. "Wildlife rescue's on the way. Please just give us some space." The minutes stretched, the morning light growing brighter. Finally, a battered pickup rolled up. Two rangers spilling out in faded uniforms, Derek Cole, tall and solid, and Marvin Lee, younger, face tight with concern. They took one look at the bobcat and sprang into action, moving with the quick efficiency of people who've done this too many times before. Lisa stepped back, holding her breath as Derek prepared a tranquilizer dart. "Easy does it," he muttered. The dart thudded home. The bobcat flinched, eyes wild, then sagged, body going limp at last. As they lifted the animal onto a stretcher, Lisa hovered, guilt and relief warring inside her. Marvin glanced at her, reading the worry on her face. "You did the right thing, ma'am," he said softly. "Most people wouldn't have bothered." Lisa nodded, unable to speak. As the rescue truck pulled away, she stood in the empty street, the sunrise catching on the blood still staining her gloves. She whispered to the silent air, "Hang in there, little guy." For the first time in years, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, ordinary people could make an extraordinary difference. Lisa's gloved hands still trembled as she climbed back into the sanitation truck, heart pounding against her ribs. The neighborhood had awakened around her. Porch lights flickered on, and a few neighbors peered out, coffee mugs in hand, exchanging wary glances about the animal rescue van that had just sped away. She could still feel the tension humming in her veins as she set the truck in gear and rolled on toward the next block. But her mind stayed stuck on the image of the limp bobcat. Jasper, she decided, feeling the name slide quietly into place. A cold drizzle began to fall, smudging the dawn into gray. Each clank and crash of garbage cans felt louder, more jarring than usual. Lisa kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the wildlife rescue truck barreling back with some urgent request, or to catch sight of a golden, wounded shape stumbling into the street. She forced herself to focus on the route, but her thoughts kept slipping away. What if they were too late? What if the damage was already done? Meanwhile, at the end of Oak Street, the rescue team worked with swift precision. Derek drove, one eye flicking to the back seat where Marvin cradled Jasper's limp body, wrapped carefully in a blanket. The bobcat's breathing was shallow, his fur matted with blood and grime, his sides rising and falling with each labored gasp. Marvin murmured gentle reassurances, careful not to jostle the animal. Every second counted. "We're almost there, hang on," Marvin said, more to himself than to the half-conscious animal. The Willow Creek Wildlife Center sat just outside town, nestled between swaying pines and a cluster of low outbuildings. As soon as they arrived, a team of veterinary staff rushed out. Dr. Patel, the lead vet, barked orders as Jasper was lifted onto a stretcher and carried inside, lights flickering overhead as the emergency room doors swung shut. Inside, the air was sharp with antiseptic and tension. Jasper's body, barely more than bones and fur, was laid gently on the metal exam table. Dr. Patel bent close, her face lined with years of hard-won experience. She listened to Jasper's heart, checked his eyes, his gums, his paws, then pressed gently on his distended belly. He let out a faint whimper. "Feels like a blockage," Dr. Patel muttered, glancing at the monitors as a tech slid an IV into Jasper's leg. stomach's swollen. He's been eating trash, plastics, God knows what else. She exchanged a look with Marvin. We need x-rays. Stat. The machine whirred to life, cold light illuminating the twisted shape of foreign objects inside Jasper's gut. Bits of plastic, a tangle of wrappers, shards of glass. Dr. Patel's jaw tightened. Prep for surgery. He won't make it through the day unless we get that out. While the rescue team fought for Jasper's life, Lisa found herself driving her route on autopilot. She kept replaying the scene in her mind. Those fierce, stubborn golden eyes, the way Jasper had looked at her, unbroken even as he collapsed. Something in that look had unsettled her, stirred up memories she tried to keep buried. The way people used to look at her after the divorce, as if she were broken, barely holding on. How many times had she felt invisible, picking up everyone else's messes, hoping someone would notice she needed help too? Lost in thought, she almost missed a stop. A sharp honk from behind jolted her back to the present, and she forced herself to focus on the job. But every time she reached for another bag, her fingers brushed the crusted blood on her gloves, and her chest tightened all over again. Back at Willow Creek, the surgical team moved with practiced urgency. Jasper was sedated, his breathing even slower now. Dr. Patel worked quickly, making a careful incision, her assistants handing her tools, sponging away blood. The room was silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor and the rhythmic click of surgical instruments. They pulled out a wad of tangled plastic, more wrappers, and a knotted string. Dr. Patel shook her head. It's a miracle he lasted this long. She worked steadily, cleaning and stitching the delicate tissues, her brow furrowed with concentration. One wrong move, and they'd lose him. Outside, rain streaked the windows, turning the parking lot into a mirror of gray and silver. Lisa finished her route in a daze and, unable to resist, called the Wildlife Center for an update. The receptionist told her Jasper was in surgery. Touch and go. Lisa thanked her and hung up, her hands numb. Inside the operating room, the tension reached its peak. Jasper's vitals dipped, a warning blare filling the air as the team scrambled. He's crashing! Get me more fluids! Dr. Patel barked. For a moment, it seemed the wild heart at the center of it all would finally stop. But then, a flicker on the screen. Jasper's heartbeat steadied, slow but stubborn. The team let out a collective sigh. The worst was over. For now. The surgery finally finished, and Jasper was moved to recovery, his body blanketed and his breathing shallow but steady. Dr. Patel leaned back, exhausted but hopeful. He's got a fighting chance, she said to Marvin, who gave her a tired grin. Lisa, still in her truck, sat in silence as the rain eased. She thought about what it meant to step in, to care for something wild and untamed. She glanced at her phone, the urge to call again almost overwhelming, but she forced herself to wait. As the Willow Creek truck disappeared into the soft gray morning, Lisa watched from her window, hope flickering in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be the end for Jasper. Maybe ordinary people could make an extraordinary difference, one desperate morning at a time. The hum of fluorescent lights and the sharp tang of disinfectant hung heavy in the Willow Creek Wildlife Center's surgical suite. For Lisa, the world outside seemed to disappear. Rain beat a steady rhythm against the window, its sound muffled by thick glass. Inside, the air was tense, electric with the kind of hope that teeters on the edge of despair. Jasper lay still under a blue sheet, his breathing shallow, the fur on his side stained and shaven. Tubes snaked from his foreleg, monitors blinked and beeped, each sound magnified in the quiet. Dr. Patel's surgical mask hid all but her eyes, which flicked between the monitor and Jasper's open belly with focused urgency. Marvin, the ranger, watched from the far side of the room, arms folded tightly across his chest. The operating team moved with the unspoken coordination of people who had stood on this precipice before. An assistant handed Dr. Patel a slender clamp. She worked quickly, voice low and steady. "There's more plastic here, twisted around the intestines. It's a mess." A nurse dabbed sweat from the vet's brow as she delicately snipped, untangling the foreign mass that had nearly cost Jasper his life. The room held its breath each time she removed a new piece: a candy wrapper, a shredded plastic bag, a fragment of foil. Marvin found himself growing angrier with every new piece they pulled free. "People never think about where their trash ends up," he muttered, almost to himself. For a moment, the monitor's tone changed, shrill and warning. The assistant's eyes widened. "BP's dropping!" "Saline, now!" Dr. Patel ordered. She never looked away from Jasper's insides, hands steady even as her heart pounded. A bead of sweat traced down her cheek. The nurse moved with urgency, and the fluid began to drip. Time bent in the glare of the surgical lamp. 10 minutes, 20, then nearly an hour. Finally, Dr. Patel pulled free the last knot of plastic, a piece of yellow grocery bag. She heaved a sigh of relief. "Close him up. Let's hope his body can do the rest." The veterinary team, exhausted but determined, cleaned the wound and closed Jasper's belly with neat stitches. Marvin stepped forward to help lift Jasper gently onto a soft pad, then rolled the table into recovery. Outside, the rain intensified, rattling the windows. Inside, Jasper was placed under a heat lamp, his small body dwarfed by the medical equipment. The tension in the room began to ease, replaced by a heavy silence. Dr. Patel peeled off her gloves, her face drawn. "He's not out of the woods, but if he makes it through tonight, he's got a shot." She glanced at Marvin, her eyes reflecting both hope and exhaustion. Marvin nodded, voice low. "You saved him, Doc." "We all did," she replied, "but it's up to him now." A nurse covered Jasper with a warm blanket, gently stroking his head before leaving. Marvin stood at the foot of the table, studying the battered animal. Jasper's fur was thin, his ribs visible beneath the skin, but there was a stubborn rise and fall to his chest. Marvin felt an odd surge of hope, as if the little wild heart on the table might just surprise them all. Elsewhere in the clinic, the story of the rescue was already spreading. Staff paused outside the glass, whispering about the Bobcat that had eaten his way through human trash and survived. Some shook their heads in frustration at the thoughtless carelessness that had nearly killed him. Others simply watched, rooting quietly for Jasper's fragile life. Lisa arrived later, the day grown long and heavy with clouds. She parked her truck in the muddy lot, her clothes still bearing the scent of garbage and rain. She hesitated at the entrance, nerves tight in her stomach. The clinic's front desk was busy, but when she mentioned the Bobcat, a young receptionist ushered her through with a soft smile. In the recovery room, Lisa paused behind the glass. Jasper looked impossibly small beneath the heat lamp, his side rising and falling in slow, careful breaths. Lisa pressed her palm to the glass, a wave of emotion rising inside her. She thought of her own struggles, the lonely years after her divorce, the late nights worrying about her daughter, the feeling of being tossed aside like so much trash. She spoke softly, barely more than a whisper. "You keep fighting, buddy. You're tougher than anyone knows." It felt silly, talking to a wild animal, but something about Jasper, His stubbornness, his refusal to give in, echoed in her bones. Dr. Patel entered, pulling off her cap. "He's stable for now," she told Lisa. "It was touch and go, but he's got a chance." Lisa nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. "Thank you. For everything." Dr. Patel smiled, exhaustion softening her face. "Thank you for not turning away. Most people would have just called animal control and left." The two women stood together in silence for a moment, watching Jasper sleep. Outside, the rain kept falling, a steady song of persistence. Inside, the little Bobcat clung to life, caught between wildness and the world that nearly destroyed him. Lisa stayed until visiting hours ended, sitting quietly and watching Jasper from her corner of the room. She remembered her father's words from childhood. "You can't fix everything, kid, but you can always choose to care." Tonight, she realized, was one of those nights. When she finally left, Lisa glanced back through the glass one last time. Jasper, blanketed and warm, gave a faint twitch of his ear, a tiny sign of life, a stubborn refusal to quit. It was enough. And so, as the night deepened and the world outside turned silver with rain, hope flickered in the quiet halls of Willow Creek. A wild heart had been given a second chance, and maybe, just maybe, so had Lisa. A week passed at Willow Creek Wildlife Center in a haze of hope and nerves. The storm that had battered the town eventually faded, leaving the forest washed clean. But inside the recovery room, the tension refused to lift. For Lisa, sleep came in fitful snatches. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Jasper's battered body, the stubborn glint in his wild eyes, and wondered if she'd done enough. She found herself returning to the sanctuary every day after her shift, still in her stained work jacket, her boots tracking flecks of gravel across the lobby floor. She became a familiar sight, always hovering by the glass that separated visitors from the intensive care space. Some of the staff recognized her and would nod in greeting. Others, seeing the worry etched into her face, simply left her to her silent vigil. Inside, Jasper slept most of the time, curled tight on his blanket under the warm glow of the heat lamp. His sides still rose and fell with cautious breaths, but he was thinner than ever. The shaved patch on his belly showed the long, careful stitches that held him together. Some days, Lisa couldn't help but worry that the vet had only delayed the inevitable. One night, unable to sleep, Lisa drove through the near-empty streets of Pine Hollow, headlights carving tunnels in the dark. The world felt small and distant, but the moment she stepped into the recovery room, she felt a quiet strength, like her presence mattered. She stood at the glass, hands in her pockets, speaking in a low, gentle voice. "You know, you're not the only one who's had to start over." Her words drifted softly in the hush. "People think they know you, but they only see what you let them see. They don't know what you've been through." Jasper twitched, a flicker of his ear as if he were listening. For a second, Lisa wondered if she was imagining things. She pressed her palm gently against the glass. "My daughter Anna. She worries I'm too soft. But sometimes it's the people who've had to fight the hardest that understand the value of a second chance." A soft, uncertain purr vibrated through the room. Lisa blinked in surprise, holding her breath. Was he really responding? Jasper shifted, paws stretching, and for the first time since his surgery, he tried to lift his head. It wobbled, then settled back on the blanket. But the motion sent a jolt of hope through Lisa's tired heart. From that moment on, Jasper's recovery became a series of tiny, hard-won victories. One morning, the vet techs found him sitting upright, his gaze following every movement in the room. The next day, he accepted a few sips of water, then a careful bite of specially prepared food. The staff buzzed with cautious excitement, trading stories about his stubbornness, how he'd bat away their hands with a weak but determined paw, refusing help unless he absolutely needed it. Lisa started bringing in a worn-out paperback novel, reading aloud in the evenings. She chose stories about wild places and lost things found again, her voice low and steady. She never admitted to anyone why she did it, but she told herself it was for Jasper's sake, that maybe the rhythm of her voice could remind him he wasn't alone. In truth, it helped her just as much. Sometimes, while reading, her mind drifted. She remembered long, lonely nights after Anna's father left, the ache of silence in a house that suddenly felt too big. She'd poured herself into work, into keeping their lives together. But there were still days when she felt like a ghost passing through her own world. Watching Jasper fight for every breath, every twitch of his tail, she saw a reflection of her own struggles. Meanwhile, the vet team kept a careful watch. Dr. Patel visited each day, checking Jasper's wounds, noting every improvement. She shared updates with Lisa, never promising more than what the evidence showed. "He's a fighter," she said one afternoon, her eyes soft. "But recovery takes time. Patience is just as important as medicine." One rainy evening, a new challenge arrived. A young intern named Miguel came on shift, tasked with trying to coax Jasper into eating more. Jasper refused the offered food, hissing weakly, tail flicking in irritation. Miguel, flustered, almost dropped the bowl, and Lisa, watching from the window, couldn't help but smile. "He's got a stubborn streak," she called through the glass. Miguel grinned, wiping his brow. "He reminds me of my abuela's old alley cat, never did what anyone expected." That broke the tension, and together they brainstormed ways to tempt Jasper. Shredded chicken, a bit of warm broth, even a feather toy dangled at the edge of his blanket. Late that night, Lisa lingered as the center prepared to close. She watched Jasper stir, his eyes finding hers through the glass. He inched closer, pressed his nose to the pane, and for one brief, electric moment, Lisa felt a bond, a wordless acknowledgement passing between them. She smiled, tears prickling in the corners of her eyes. As she left, Lisa paused at the front desk. The receptionist, seeing her hopeful expression, nodded. "He's turning a corner," she said softly. Lisa walked out into the night, the rain now a gentle drizzle. She felt lighter, hope kindling in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she believed in the possibility of healing, not just for Jasper, but for herself as well. Inside, under the steady warmth of the lamp, Jasper curled into a deeper sleep. His body was still fragile, but his spirit had awakened, a tiny, wild heart refusing to be tamed, and quietly, stubbornly, choosing to live. Spring sunlight spilled through the wire mesh of the sanctuary's outdoor enclosure, warming the earth and sending up the sharp scent of grass and pine. In the weeks since his surgery, Jasper's transformation was nothing short of astonishing. His fur was growing back thick and sleek, his eyes sharp again, and the ribs that once jutted out like question marks had all but disappeared beneath a new layer of muscle. He was still thin, yes, but there was no mistaking it. Jasper was no longer a fragile survivor. He was becoming wild again. Lisa watched from beyond the fence, leaning on the rail with a cup of coffee in hand. She'd started volunteering on weekends, cleaning enclosures and delivering meals. Anything to be closer to Jasper and the other rescues. Her life still felt a little off balance, but each day at Willow Creek made her feel more grounded. She liked the rhythm, the feeding, the cleaning, the steady chorus of animal sounds. It was honest work, and she felt needed in a way that she hadn't since Anna was little. Jasper, meanwhile, made it clear he hadn't forgotten who he was. From the first moment they let him outside, his instincts kicked in. He stalked along the perimeter, nose twitching, tail low and tense. When a volunteer approached with food, Jasper crouched, ears flat, eyes narrowed in suspicion. He refused meals from any hand but Dr. Patel's, and even then, only if she kept her distance. One morning, as Lisa filled the water trough, she saw Jasper swipe at a hat Marvin had dropped near the fence, sending it spinning through the dirt. The ranger just laughed, but Jasper's yowl sent a chill down Lisa's spine, a reminder that no matter how much time he spent among humans, Jasper would never be truly tame. The staff debated his fate. In the break room, over steaming mugs and hurried lunches, opinions flew back and forth. "He's got too much fight left in him," Marvin argued, watching Jasper prowl. "I say let him go when he's ready." Others weren't so sure. Can a wild animal ever really come back from something like this? Miguel wondered out loud. He's been through hell. What if he can't hunt, or worse? What if he starts relying on people for food? Dr. Patel frowned, her gaze distant. He's healthy enough, but release is a risk. If we keep him here, he'll be safe, fed. But is that really living? Lisa stayed quiet during these discussions, but inside she felt Jasper's struggle as if it were her own. She remembered her first months after Anna's father left, the way every day felt like a fight, how hard it was to trust anyone, even herself. She saw that same wary resilience in Jasper, the need to test every boundary, to prove he was strong enough to survive, alone if necessary. One afternoon, a family visited the sanctuary. Their young boy, maybe 7 or 8, pressed his face against the wire, eyes wide. "Mom, look, it's the Bobcat from the news." Jasper ignored the crowd at first, but when a small dog barked near the fence, he spun with a snarl, fur puffed, claws flashing. The crowd gasped, some parents pulling their children back. Lisa stepped in quickly, gently redirecting the group and reassuring the nervous visitors. But as she walked back to the enclosure, she couldn't shake the image of Jasper, wild, cornered, desperate to remind the world that he was not a pet. That night, Lisa stayed late. She watched Jasper pace under the moonlight, muscles taut beneath his coat. She thought about the stories that circulated in town. Some neighbors were afraid, whispering about the danger of letting a predator loose near their homes. Others, especially the children, had taken Jasper's story to heart, sending letters and drawings to the center. Lisa traced the edge of one crayon drawing, a crude but earnest portrait of Jasper with a crown on his head and a caption, "King of the Wild." She smiled, her heart tugged between pride and worry. The days turned into weeks, and Jasper's strength only grew. But so did his distance. He lashed out at volunteers, shredded toys and blankets, and refused to accept any gesture that smacked of captivity. Lisa felt both admiration and heartbreak. She wanted him to be safe, but she knew, deep down, that safety wasn't enough. Not for a wild thing. One stormy evening, as thunder rumbled through the hills, Jasper clawed at the fence with a fury that shocked everyone. It took 3 staffers to calm him, and even then, he prowled the edges of his enclosure, growling at every flash of lightning. Dr. Patel watched, shaking her head. "He's telling us what he needs," she said quietly. "We have to listen." Later, alone in the break room, Lisa studied herself in the window's reflection. She saw the lines etched deeper on her face, the tired eyes, but also a new kind of strength. She wondered if, like Jasper, she'd spent too long living in survival mode, never really free, always on edge. The next day, she found Jasper pressed up against the far end of the enclosure, staring through the mesh at the dark line of trees beyond. His tail flicked, his body coiled with restless energy. Lisa knelt beside him, speaking softly. Her words carried on the wind. "You want to go home, don't you?" she murmured. Jasper blinked, unblinking, wild as ever. For both of them, it seemed, the hardest part was yet to come. Jasper's story was no longer just Lisa's quiet secret or Willow Creek's daily challenge. The tale of the wild bobcat who survived on the edge of town had spread across Pine Hollow like wildfire. In the local diner, on Facebook groups, and even in church bulletins, people whispered and argued. Was Jasper a symbol of hope or a danger waiting to happen? It began innocently enough. The Willow Creek Wildlife Center posted a photo of Jasper peering through the wire, his fur glossy, his eyes fierce. The caption read, "Resilience in action. Thank you for supporting Jasper's recovery." Almost immediately, the post went viral in town. Supporters flooded the comments with heart emojis and messages of encouragement. "Keep fighting, Jasper," one wrote. "Thank you to everyone who helped him," said another. But the other side of the conversation was just as loud. Some worried neighbors warned about wild animals so close to homes. What if he gets out and hurts someone's pet or a kid? One comment read, drawing dozens of likes. At the hardware store, an old-timer grumbled that Jasper would come looking for a handout, or worse, bring in other predators. The lines were drawn, invisible but real. Lisa felt the shift most acutely. At the grocery store, she overheard a group of women debating whether Jasper should be released at all. One pointedly asked if Lisa, the trash truck lady, thought it was safe to have wild predators wandering town limits. Lisa just smiled politely, refusing to take the bait, but her heart pounded in her chest. She knew what fear could do to a community, how quickly it could drown out empathy. At Willow Creek, the debate filtered into every staff meeting. Marvin, ever the pragmatist, advocated for Jasper's eventual release. "He's wild, through and through. Keeping him caged is cruel. The forest's where he belongs." But others hesitated. "We can't risk another incident," Dr. Patel cautioned, flipping through paperwork. "If something goes wrong, the whole center is on the line." As the grown-ups argued, the children of Pine Hollow were quietly forming their own movement. The local elementary school held a Jasper Day. Kids drew pictures, wrote letters, and collected change for the center's animal rescue fund. The break room at Willow Creek became wallpapered with crayon sketches of bobcats, Jasper in a superhero cape, Jasper with a heart-shaped nose, Jasper and a group of animal friends picking up litter together. Inspired by the kids' enthusiasm, Lisa suggested a school trip to the sanctuary. She coordinated with teachers and arranged for the children to tour the grounds, meet the staff, and learn about wildlife and the danger of trash. On the day of the visit, a yellow bus pulled up outside the gates, and a flood of eager faces poured out, chattering with excitement. Lisa led them from enclosure to enclosure, explaining how each animal had its own story, some orphaned, some hurt by cars or poison, others by trash, just like Jasper. The children pressed up against the fence, eyes wide, as Jasper prowled his enclosure, more curious than threatened by the pint-sized audience. When one little girl, Sarah, shyly held up a drawing to the wire, Jasper stared for a long moment, then flicked his tail and walked away, leaving a cluster of giggling kids in his wake. The school trip sparked more than smiles and laughter. It brought the story home to families across town. Kids came back determined to make a difference. At Lisa's suggestion, the school organized a cleanup day in the park near the forest's edge. Dozens of families showed up, armed with gloves, bags, and grabbers. Lisa and Anna spent the afternoon gathering bottles, wrappers, and cans, working side by side with neighbors and strangers alike. That evening, Lisa posted a photo on her own social media. A group of kids holding up trash bags, grinning in front of a hand-painted sign, "For Jasper, for the wild." The post got more shares than anything she'd ever posted before. Suddenly, people who'd been afraid or angry started thinking differently. Maybe the wild isn't something to fear, but something to care for, one neighbor commented. Still, the divide lingered. A group of homeowners circulated a petition demanding that Jasper be moved to a larger zoo or permanent captivity. Arguments flared at the town hall. One meeting devolved into shouting as people on both sides vented years of frustration. Not just about bobcats, but about change, about safety, about what it meant to live near the forest. Jasper, oblivious to the human drama, became more himself every day. He swiped at hats dangled too close to his enclosure, batted toys into puddles, and once managed to snag a set of car keys from an unlucky volunteer. His mischief turned into legend, softening even the hardest hearts. One afternoon, a pair of retired sisters, longtime critics of the sanctuary, stopped by and left giggling after Jasper stole their sun hats and paraded around with one dangling from his paw. Through it all, Lisa grew more confident in her new role. She spoke at school assemblies, appeared on a local radio show, and gently pushed the message that Jasper's story wasn't about one animal, but about the responsibility everyone shared. "The wild is part of who we are," she told the radio host. "We have to look out for each other, people and animals alike." At home, Anna watched her mother with a new kind of respect. "You never give up," she said one evening. Lisa smiled, feeling something inside her shift. Maybe she'd started out trying to save Jasper, but somewhere along the way, he'd started saving her too. By the end of spring, Pine Hollow wasn't united, but it was talking, thinking, and cleaning up in ways it never had before. And Jasper, the wild heart at the center of it all, prowled his enclosure with restless energy, waiting for whatever came next. As spring faded into summer, the decision everyone had been dreading finally arrived. The rangers and staff at Willow Creek had done all they could. Jasper was healthy, his coat thick and lustrous, muscles rippling beneath his fur. But for all the progress, one truth had become inescapable. Jasper would never be a house cat, nor a tame sanctuary animal. He prowled the length of his enclosure with a restless, caged energy. The wild lived inside him, too fierce to ever fade. The news spread quickly. Jasper's future would be decided at a special staff meeting, with input from the sanctuary's board and the local wildlife authorities. That morning, Lisa arrived early, nerves twisted in her stomach. She paused outside Jasper's enclosure, watching him stalk the perimeter. He looked back at her, eyes shining gold in the morning light. For a moment, she felt the familiar spark of connection, the same one that had rooted her to the spot on that garbage-strewn street months ago. The meeting was tense. Dr. Patel laid out the facts. Jasper was strong enough to survive in the wild, but not guaranteed to thrive. There were no signs of long-term injury or dependence, but after all he'd endured, starvation, surgery, confinement, his odds were still uncertain. "There's no perfect answer," Dr. Patel said, rubbing her tired eyes. "If we keep him here, he'll be safe. But he'll never be free. If we let him go, he could disappear. Or worse. Marvin spoke up, his voice steady. He's a wild thing. We owe him a chance to live on his own terms. That's what we'd want, if we were in his paws. Others hesitated. Some staff feared for the animal. Others worried about public backlash if anything went wrong. The discussion circled for over an hour, rising and falling like the wind. Finally, Dr. Patel turned to Lisa. You were the first one to help him. What do you think we should do? Lisa swallowed, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. She looked at her hands, scarred, strong, and still stained with memories of Jasper's blood. She remembered all the times she'd stood at the glass, hoping for any sign he would make it, feeling his fight inside herself. She cleared her throat. I think he deserves to be wild. I know what it's like to lose your freedom, to be stuck somewhere safe, but not really living. It's hard, and sometimes it hurts, but if you don't take the risk, you never heal. Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. He survived all this because he wouldn't give up. I won't give up on him now either. A hush fell over the room. Dr. Patel nodded, and after a moment, so did the rest of the staff. The decision was made. Jasper would be released as soon as the weather and his final health checks allowed. The following days were a blur of preparation. Rangers mapped out the best release site, deep in the protected state forest, far from roads or neighborhoods, but not so distant Jasper would be utterly lost. Staff gathered up supplies, a tracking collar, transport crate, and medical supplies, just in case. Lisa barely slept. She wandered the sanctuary grounds at night, thinking about her own journey, the months since she'd met Jasper, the changes in herself, the fears she'd let go. On the day of the release, Lisa woke before dawn. She pulled on her oldest jeans and her work boots, hands shaking as she made coffee she could barely taste. Anna met her at the door, wide-eyed and quiet. "You're nervous, Mom," she said. Lisa managed a wobbly smile. "Yeah, I guess I am." Anna squeezed her hand. "He'll be okay. You showed him how to fight." The sanctuary staff gathered before sunrise. Jasper was waiting in his crate, calm but alert, his eyes bright and aware. Marvin drove the truck, Lisa riding shotgun, Dr. Patel and 2 interns in the back. The ride through the pine forest was silent, everyone lost in thought as they bounced along the rutted old logging roads. When they reached the chosen spot, a sun-dappled clearing, wild and untouched, Lisa's heart began to pound. Marvin and Dr. Patel checked the area one last time, making sure there were no hikers or other animals nearby. The world was quiet except for birdsong and the gentle sigh of wind in the trees. At last it was time. Lisa knelt by the crate, her hand pressed to the metal as Jasper moved restlessly inside. "You're going home, big guy," she whispered. "Don't forget who you are." Dr. Patel clipped the collar around Jasper's neck and carefully opened the crate. Jasper hesitated, paws braced, golden eyes surveying the world beyond the bars. The moment stretched, tense and fragile. Then, in a single fluid motion, he darted from the crate, muscles rippling as he sprinted across the clearing. For a moment, he paused at the edge of the forest, looking back at the humans who had patched him up, fed him, worried over him. Lisa felt her breath catch, a bittersweet ache, pride and fear tangled together. Then Jasper melted into the undergrowth, leaving only a faint ripple in the tall grass and the echo of wildness behind. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Lisa wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. "He's free," she said softly. That's what matters. They packed up the empty crate and drove home under a sky streaked pink with sunrise. Lisa looked out the window, heart full of hope and pain. She knew Jasper's journey was far from over, and neither was hers. But for now, both wild hearts had taken the leap, trusting the world to meet them halfway. Weeks slipped by in Pine Hollow, and summer crept gently across the valley. For Lisa, time moved strangely in Jasper's absence. A swirl of everyday chores, quiet reflection, and a new sense of possibility. The world outside seemed unchanged. The same early mornings, the same rhythm of trash routes, the same routine stops for gas and groceries. Yet something in Lisa's heart had shifted, softened by hope and the quiet bravery of letting go. Life at Willow Creek Wildlife Center, too, found a new balance. The staff no longer hovered at Jasper's enclosure, but found themselves looking out at the woods, scanning for signs of the wild bobcat they had saved. The tracking collar had sent its first strong signals, showing that Jasper was alive and on the move, carving out a territory for himself on the far side of the protected forest. Marvin checked the tracker every morning, reporting back with a kind of pride that surprised even him. "He's still out there," he would say, and every head in the staff room would nod. For Lisa, the proof of Jasper's survival came in smaller, sweeter ways. One Saturday, as she weeded her small garden with Anna, her daughter pointed excitedly at a patch of soft earth near the fence. "Look, Mom!" Anna knelt and pressed her palm beside a fresh paw print, its shape unmistakable. "That's a bobcat, right?" Lisa crouched down, heart fluttering. The print was big, bigger than any stray cat or neighborhood dog. She reached out, not quite touching it, feeling the wildness humming just beneath the surface. "Yeah, kiddo, I think it is." That simple discovery made something catch inside Lisa, a sense of connection, a reminder that hope could live quietly, even after letting go. She took a photo of Anna's hand beside the paw print and sent it to Marvin and Dr. Patel. Replies came quickly, a string of exclamation points, then Dr. Patel's gentle, "Our wild hearts still roaming close." Jasper's story rippled across Pine Hollow, changing more than just the people at Willow Creek. The kids who'd rallied for Jasper kept the energy alive, making wildlife posters and staging neighborhood cleanups all summer. Local businesses hung flyers about protecting our wild neighbors. The town council debated new littering laws, and a Wildlife Awareness Week kicked off at the start of August. Suddenly, families who'd once complained about raccoons or coyotes began talking about how to keep trash secure, how to protect animals and people alike. At the center of it all was a quiet, growing pride, a realization that ordinary action could matter. Lisa found herself thinking about the morning she'd first found Jasper, the sense of helplessness and wonder. The voice that had urged her to do something instead of walking away. She shared that story one afternoon with Anna, who listened with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Were you scared?" Anna asked, pulling weeds from around the tomato plants. "Terrified," Lisa admitted, smiling. "But sometimes the scary thing is the right thing. Sometimes you have to act even when you're not sure it'll make a difference." Anna thought about that. "I'm glad you did, Mom. Otherwise, we never would have met Jasper." She grinned, and maybe the whole town would still be throwing trash everywhere. Lisa laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. She realized then that saving Jasper hadn't been about one wild animal. It had been about changing herself, her community, and maybe even the way people thought about the world outside their own doors. The community garden became a small haven that summer, not just for Lisa and Anna, but for other families and their children. Neighbors who'd barely spoken before lingered to talk about the changes sweeping through town. Lisa found herself giving impromptu talks about wildlife and trash, always ending with a reminder that every small act counted. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, Lisa walked the forest trails just beyond the edge of town. She moved slowly, breathing in the spicy scent of pine and wild mint, listening for the snap of twigs or the low, rolling call of distant animals. Once, she thought she saw a shadow slip through the ferns, a glint of gold eyes and a flash of spotted fur. But the moment was gone as quickly as it came. She stood for a long time, letting the silence settle, feeling grateful for the mystery and the chance to hope. Back at Willow Creek, Dr. Patel began planning new educational programs, using Jasper's story as a lesson in compassion and responsibility. She invited Lisa to speak at a school event, and though public speaking made Lisa's stomach flutter, she agreed. Standing in front of a room of eager faces, Lisa told Jasper's story from the beginning, how fear, kindness, and stubbornness could all live side by side. She finished with a question. What would you do if you found someone or something in trouble? Would you walk away, or would you help, even if you weren't sure how? The children's answers, brave, honest, sometimes funny, warmed Lisa's heart. That night, Lisa sat on her porch, sipping tea as the sun set over Pine Hollow. The world was quiet except for the steady buzz of insects and the distant laughter of children playing on the street. She watched Anna chase fireflies across the lawn and realized that hope was something you had to nurture, again and again, with each small, imperfect act. Jasper's journey had changed the town. More than that, it had changed Lisa. She had learned that the wild, in all its unpredictability and beauty, was not something to fear or fix, but something to respect, to learn from, and to protect. Some nights, she still wondered where Jasper was, whether he'd found a safe den, whether he remembered the hands that had helped him heal. But she also knew that some stories didn't need to end in certainty. Sometimes, the lesson was simply to let go, to trust, and to keep hope alive, wild and stubborn as a bobcat's heart. It was the start of a new school year in Pine Hollow, and the air was thick with the scents of late summer. Cut grass, warm asphalt, the faint musk of leaves just beginning to turn. Lisa stood on the steps of the Willow Creek Community Center, a folder clutched in her hands. Her palms were sweaty, her heart beating fast. She had faced plenty of challenges in her life. Raising Anna alone, surviving heartbreak, rescuing Jasper. But nothing had prepared her for public speaking. She glanced through the glass doors, where rows of folding chairs waited. The room was filled with children, teachers, sanctuary volunteers, and a scattering of parents. At the front, a table was piled with colorful posters. Respect the wild, keep our town clean, and every creature matters. Lisa saw Anna in the second row, her face bright with encouragement. Dr. Patel gave her a supportive nod. "You've got this, Lisa," she whispered. "Just tell your story." Lisa took a deep breath and stepped to the podium. The murmur of voices faded as she began. "Most of you know me as the lady who drives the trash truck," she said, earning a ripple of laughter. "But a few months ago, I was just someone who saw a wild animal in trouble and decided to help." She spoke of that early morning, the fear and awe of seeing Jasper for the first time, and the decision that changed everything. She described the frantic rush to Willow Creek, the long nights watching Jasper's chest rise and fall, the moments when hope flickered low but never died. Lisa's voice cracked as she told of the surgeries, the setbacks, and the stubborn little victories. Jasper's first purr, his fierce glare, the way he refused to give up. The audience listened in rapt silence. Some parents dabbed at their eyes. Children leaned forward, eager to hear what happened next. Lisa spoke of Jasper's release, how it had broken her heart to let him go, but how it had also healed something inside her. Sometimes, she said, caring means letting go. It means trusting that the wild knows what it's doing, and that your kindness will ripple out, even if you never see the results. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. Jasper's story isn't just about a bobcat. It's about every single one of us. It's about second chances, about not giving up on something just because it's broken or wild or different. She told them about the changes she'd seen in Pine Hollow, the new bins around town, the litter patrols organized by students, the way neighbors now looked out for each other, and the animals that shared their world. She described how children's drawings had covered the walls at Willow Creek, how the center had received enough donations to expand its rescue program and start wildlife education classes at local schools. Lisa closed her folder and spoke from the heart. We can't always fix everything, and we can't always keep the wild things safe, but we can respect them. We can learn from them. And sometimes, when we're lucky, we can give them a second chance. And they give us one too. Dr. Patel stepped forward and placed a hand on Lisa's shoulder, turning to address the audience. What Lisa did took courage. So does what all of you are doing. Every time you pick up trash, every time you teach someone about wildlife, every time you choose to care. That's how we make a difference. The children clapped first, then the parents, and finally everyone in the room. Anna ran up and hugged her mother, beaming with pride. For a moment, Lisa let herself soak in the warmth, so much more powerful than the anxiety that had threatened to drown her minutes earlier. After the assembly, people crowded around with questions and stories of their own. A boy who'd helped a baby bird, a teacher who now kept her class windows closed so squirrels wouldn't wander in, a teenager who volunteered at Willow Creek on weekends. The Bobcat's story had become everyone's story, a reminder that kindness wasn't just about grand gestures, but about all the little choices made each day. A reporter from the local newspaper snapped photos and took notes. That weekend, an article appeared. Wild at Heart: How One Bobcat Changed Pine Hollow. Donations poured in for the sanctuary. More volunteers signed up than ever before. Jasper's name became shorthand for hope, a lesson passed from parent to child, friend to neighbor. In the days that followed, Lisa found herself thinking about second chances, not just for Jasper, but for herself, Anna, and the whole town. She realized that giving a wild animal another shot at life had reminded everyone that they too could start over. That forgiveness, resilience, and hope were always possible, even after mistakes and heartache. At Willow Creek, Dr. Patel launched a new program for school groups, using Jasper's journey to teach about the balance of science and compassion, wildness and respect. It's not enough to just save a life, she explained to each class. We have to let it go, to let it be wild. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is trust that our care will make a difference, even if we can't see the ending. Lisa visited the forest trails more often, always scanning for paw prints in the soft earth, listening for distant rustles in the underbrush. Sometimes she thought she caught a glimpse of movement, silent and golden in the green. She'd smile, knowing that, like Jasper, everyone deserved the chance to write their own story. Second chances, she realized, weren't just for wild animals. They were for anyone who'd ever felt lost, broken, or unsure. The wild, after all, was not something to fear, but something to respect and to learn from. Again and again, sunset in Pine Hollow always arrived quietly, painting the treetops with gold and rose before the light faded into blue. On this evening, Lisa and Anna walked the newly cleaned-up trails near the edge of the forest, their steps soft in the moss and pine needles. Around them, laughter and voices floated on the breeze. Families, friends, and neighbors, many of whom had joined that summer's movement for a cleaner, more compassionate community. Lisa paused for a moment at a small wooden sign posted along the trail. Hand-painted by the local kids, it read, "For Jasper, for the wild." She smiled, remembering how these woods had once felt distant and untamed, a boundary to be respected but not explored. Now they belong to everyone, in the best possible way, alive with hope, shaped by shared care and newfound connection. As the last sunbeams slipped between the trees, Anna crouched down, examining a row of paw prints in the damp soil. "Think these are Jasper's?" she asked, her eyes bright with wonder. Lisa knelt beside her, tracing a print with one finger. "Maybe," she answered softly. "Or maybe they're from one of his friends." She brushed a strand of hair behind Anna's ear, heart swelling with gratitude for all that had changed since the day she found Jasper in the trash-strewn street. Behind them, the town's cleanup crew, once a handful of volunteers, now a small army, carried bags of trash, laughter echoing as they finished another day's work. Willow Creek's rangers and staff mingled with townsfolk, some still shy, others exuberant. Marvin shared a joke with a group of teenagers, while Dr. Patel guided a family through a cluster of wildflowers, explaining which plants were native and which to watch out for. Lisa stood back and watched, realizing how much the world around her had transformed, not just in action, but in spirit. Fear had become understanding, suspicion had become curiosity, and isolation, her own most of all, had given way to friendship. At the center of it all, Jasper's story had become a living thread, weaving people together in ways no one could have predicted. Children still drew bobcats on sidewalks and notebooks. Teachers wove lessons about wildlife into their curriculums. The mayor, once skeptical, now boasted about Pine Hollow's commitment to keeping the wild safe and healthy. As dusk settled, Lisa gathered everyone near the trailhead for a final message. The crowd hushed as she stepped up onto a small stump, Anna at her side. "I want to thank you all," Lisa began, her voice carrying through the twilight. "Not just for picking up trash, but for picking up each other, for looking out for what's wild in our woods and in our hearts." She paused, letting the quiet settle, her eyes meeting faces both familiar and new. Saving Jasper wasn't just about one animal. It was about choosing to act when you could have walked away. It was about believing that small things matter. One call, one rescue, one day, one choice. And every time you chose to care, you made a difference. Not just for him, but for all of us. She glanced at Anna, who squeezed her hand and smiled back. We all have a role in protecting the wild hearts around us. Sometimes it's as simple as picking up trash. Sometimes it's teaching a child. Sometimes it's speaking up for those who don't have a voice. Lisa's words were gentle but firm, reaching even those on the edges of the group. Jasper's life was saved by ordinary people acting on compassion and respect. That's what real strength looks like. Not just the strength to survive, but the strength to hope, to help, to believe that our actions matter. even if we never see the end of the story. The group stood in quiet reflection for a moment, the woods around them alive with the sound of evening birdsong. Someone started to clap, and soon the whole crowd joined in. The applause was not for Lisa alone or for Jasper, but for the community they had built together, one rooted in courage, humility, and the simple, persistent power of caring. As the group dispersed, Lisa walked with Anna along the path toward home. Anna pointed out a fox darting through the underbrush, then a pair of deer moving silently among the trees. The world felt both larger and more intimate, full of possibilities. That night, as Lisa tucked Anna into bed, her daughter asked, "Do you think we'll see Jasper again?" Lisa brushed Anna's hair and kissed her forehead. "Maybe. Or maybe he'll just let us know he's still out there, living his wild life. And maybe that's enough." She stepped out onto the porch, breathing in the cool, pine-scented air. In the distance, the forest shimmered under a rising moon. Lisa found herself thinking of all the ways Jasper had changed her, not just by needing her help, but by showing her the wild strength and hope that had always lived inside her too. She sat quietly, letting the lessons of the last month settle deep in her bones. That true connection came from action, humility, and the courage to care. That every being, no matter how wild or wounded, deserved respect and a chance at freedom. And that hope, once planted, could ripple outward to touch lives she'd never meet. Lisa closed her eyes, whispering a silent promise to keep protecting the wild, to teach Anna to do the same, to never let the world grow small or hard or unkind. If Jasper's story touched you, share your thoughts. Tell your own wild encounter, or simply choose one small act of care in your own corner of the world. Because hope, like the wild, survives when we nurture it, together. The journey had ended, but the work and the inspiration would ripple outward, quiet as paw prints in the dark, enduring as the call of a wild heart.